Ethan Morales was already in trouble when the money hit the kitchen table. It was not his money. He knew that before he even touched it. The bills lay there in a neat stack, crisp and green, smelling faintly of cologne and leather, nothing like the soft, worn cash his mother usually counted twice before paying rent. The sight of it made his stomach tighten. Money never appeared in their apartment unless something bad had happened first. The problem was that something bad had already happened, and it was still happening. 2 days earlier, Ethan had saved a life without meaning to. Now the life he had saved was slowly reaching back for him. He stood in the doorway, backpack still slung over one shoulder, watching his mother sit at the table with her hands folded as if in prayer. She looked smaller than usual, wrapped in an old sweater even though the heater was finally working again. Her eyes were red, but there was relief in them too, and that scared him more than the tears. "Where did that come from?" Ethan asked. She flinched at his voice, then forced a smile that did not quite settle on her face. "Help," she said. "Someone helping us." Ethan did not move. He already knew who that someone was. It had started at the gas station off Route 17. The one nobody stopped at unless they were desperate or lost. Ethan had gone there because it was cheaper and closer, because his mother needed milk and bread, and because he was tired of walking past places that looked warm and full and knowing he did not belong inside. The boy on the concrete had not belonged there either. First, Ethan thought it was a fight. 2 men stood nearby, quiet and still, their hands tucked into their coats. The third lay on his side near the pump, one hand clawing at his throat, his face turning a color Ethan had only seen once before, when a neighbor overdosed in their building. Ethan should have kept walking. He knew that. Poor kids learn early that hesitation is a luxury. But something about the boy's wrist caught his eye. A watch. Expensive. Gold. Still ticking. The sound had cut through everything else. Ethan dropped his bag and knelt without asking permission, without thinking about the men watching him. He remembered a health class video, a blurry memory of a plastic dummy and a teacher who had looked bored while explaining how to save a choking person. He did it wrong. Too hard. Too fast. The boy gagged, coughed, then sucked in air like he'd been underwater too long. One of the men swore softly. The other stared at Ethan as if trying to decide whether he was a miracle or a problem. That decision followed Ethan home. Now the money lay between him and his mother like a confession neither of them wanted to make out loud. "They said it was a thank you," she continued, avoiding his eyes, "for helping that boy." Ethan laughed once, sharp and humorless. "That's not a thank you. That's a leash." She finally looked at him then, really looked, and he saw fear behind the relief. "What was I supposed to do?" she asked. "Say no." "Yes," Ethan said immediately, then stopped. He did not know if that was true. He did not know what no would have cost them. That was the problem. Every answer led somewhere worse. The next day at school, the trouble stopped pretending to be polite. Ray found him by the lockers before first period. Ray always appeared where tension gathered, like static before a storm. He leaned close, lowering his voice. "You being watched," he said. Ethan did not ask how Ray knew. Ray always knew. "By who?" Ray smiled without humor. "You already know." Ethan spent the morning trying to act normal, which only made him feel more exposed. Every hallway felt narrower. Every adult felt unreliable. By lunchtime, he had decided he needed to fix this himself because no one else was going to. He went to the counselor's office and told a half-truth. He said he was scared. He said people had been asking questions. He left out the names and the money and the men at the gas station. The counselor nodded, wrote things down, and promised to keep an eye on the situation. Ethan walked out knowing nothing would change. That afternoon, the car followed him home. It rolled alongside the curb as he walked, slow and smooth, its windows tinted just enough to hide faces. When it stopped, a door opened. A man stepped out, younger than Ethan expected, his movements casual, almost friendly. "Get in," the man said. "No," Ethan replied. The first punch came fast. Not hard enough to break anything. Hard enough to teach. Ethan staggered, tasted blood, then swung back. His fist connected with air. He went down, the pavement cold against his cheek. They did not drag him into the car. They did not threaten him. They told him to think. They told him that gratitude had a way of turning into obligation if it was ignored too long. That night, Ethan overheard his mother on the phone again. This time he heard the name, Victor Moreno, the man whose son he had saved, the man who never left a debt unsettled. Ethan lay awake, staring at the ceiling, understanding finally what he had done. He had not saved a life. He had entered a system. Ethan learned quickly that silence could be louder than threats. The day after he overheard his mother say Victor Moreno's name, nothing happened. No cars, no calls, no men at the corner. The quiet stretched thin, brittle, as if it might shatter if he moved too fast. He went to school, sat through classes, answered when spoken to. Teachers praised his focus. Ray watched him from across the room with a look that said watching was safer than asking. After school, Ethan did not go straight home. He cut through the alley behind the grocery store and circled back twice, checking reflections in windows, listening for footsteps that matched his own. When he finally reached their apartment building, the front door was unlocked. Inside, a man sat at the kitchen table where the money had been. He was not old, but he carried himself like someone who expected time to move around him. Dark hair, careful suit, eyes that measured distance and weight and consequence. He stood when Ethan entered, smiling as if this were a social call. "Ethan," the man said. "I am Victor." Ethan did not answer. He put his backpack down slowly and stayed near the door. Victor noticed and nodded, approving restraint. "You saved my son," Victor continued. "I do not forget things like that." "I did not do it for you," Ethan said. "I know," Victor replied. "That's why this matters." Victor spoke calmly, almost gently. He explained that gratitude was simple when handled correctly, that help given should be met with help returned. He gestured around the apartment to the warmth, the fixed wiring, the food in the fridge. "These are not gifts," he said. "They are balance." "I do not want balance," Ethan said. "I want out." Victor's smile tightened, just slightly. "Out of what?" "Out of whatever this is." Victor considered him. "You already are in it. You just do not understand the shape yet." That was when Victor offered the solution. Not money, not protection, opportunity. He said Ethan was smart, observant, reliable. He said there were ways a boy like Ethan could earn safety without getting his hands dirty. Watching, listening, passing things along. "You do not become one of us," Victor said. "You remain yourself. That's the value." Ethan shook his head. "No." Victor did not argue. He simply nodded and stood. "Think," he said again. "I'll be in touch." The door closed softly behind him, and the apartment felt smaller than before. Ethan tried to resist. He really did. He avoided places where he might be noticed. He stopped answering unknown numbers. He told his mother nothing because telling her would mean involving her, and he refused to do that. But pressure has a way of finding cracks. Came through Alex. They met by accident, or at least it felt that way. Ethan was leaving school late when a familiar voice called his name. The boy from the gas station stood by the gate, looking healthier, dressed like someone who had never worried about rent. His wrist was bare. "You Ethan," Alex said. "I wanted to thank you, properly." "I do not need thanks," Ethan replied. He turned to leave, but Alex stepped into his path. "My father says that's exactly why we should talk." They sat on a low wall near the parking lot. Alex talked too fast, like someone afraid the words might escape him. He said he remembered everything. The panic, the air rushing back, the stranger kneeling beside him. He said his father had not slept in days after. "He does not do well with debts," Alex admitted. "That's his problem," Ethan said. Alex looked at him carefully. "It's yours now too, whether you like it or not." That night, Ray showed up at Ethan's window. He climbed in without asking and sat on the bed, breathing hard. "You on a list," he said. "Not the good kind." Ethan clenched his jaw. Then help me get off it. Ray laughed short and sharp. There is no off. There's only deeper or smarter. The next few weeks blurred into a pattern Ethan hated. Victor did not demand obedience. He engineered necessity. A teacher hinted at trouble with Ethan's attendance. A bill appeared unpaid despite the money. A man followed Ray home one night and made sure Ray noticed. Each problem came with an implied solution. Ethan tried to play the edges. He listened without committing. He passed along information that felt harmless. Schedules, names, places where people felt safe. He told himself it was not violence. It was not crime. It was observation. Then the warehouse burned. Ethan stood across the street with Ray, watching smoke claw at the sky. Sirens wailed in the distance. Ray whispered, "That was not supposed to happen." Later, Victor called Ethan into a back room of a restaurant. The air smelled of grease and coffee. Victor's voice was calm, but his eyes were cold. "Things escalate when people make mistakes," he said. "You passed along a name you did not understand." "I did not know," Ethan said. Victor nodded. "Ignorance is expensive." That was the second fight. It was not fists this time. It was words sharp and cutting. Ethan accused Victor of manipulation. Victor accused Ethan of naivety. The argument ended when Victor leaned forward and said quietly, "You do not get to be innocent and involved. Choose one." Ethan left shaking, knowing he had achieved something and lost something at the same time. He had learned the truth. He had also crossed a line. The second turn came when Alex showed up at Ethan's door late one night, bruised and angry. "My father thinks you a liability," Alex said. "And he's right." Ethan stared at him. "Then why are you here?" "Because I owe you," Alex replied. "And because I do not want to be like him." That was when Ethan realized the worst part. The system was not just using him. It was training him, teaching him how to see leverage, how to weigh silence against speech, how to survive by narrowing choices until they looked inevitable. And he understood something else, something colder and more dangerous. Victor was not the only one watching him anymore. Ethan stopped pretending there was still a clean way out. The pressure tightened quietly. No more polite pauses, no more waiting. Victor's world moved on schedules that did not care about doubt. A shipment was delayed. Someone talked when they should have stayed silent. A problem needed containment and Ethan's name surfaced again, not because he was powerful, but because he was useful in places where power drew too much attention. "You do not have to do anything," Victor told him over coffee in a half-empty diner. "You just have to be present. People behave differently when they think someone is listening." "That's doing something," Ethan replied. Victor studied him. "That's growing up." The deadline arrived without ceremony. Victor needed confirmation that a certain man was planning to defect. Ethan knew the man. A dock worker with tired eyes and a daughter who waited for him every night by the window. Ethan had spoken to him once, shared a cigarette, laughed about nothing. Ethan stalled. He delayed the message. He told himself that silence was still not violence. Then Ray disappeared. No warning. No explanation. One day he did not show up to school. The next, his phone went dark. Ethan went to Ray's apartment and found the door ajar. The place too neat, as if someone had cleaned up a mess they did not want discovered. When Ethan confronted Victor, his voice broke for the first time. "You said nobody would get hurt." Victor's reply was calm, almost tired. "I said I would try." That was the third descent. The moment Ethan understood there was no balance, only accumulation. Every favor stacked weight onto him until standing still felt like drowning. Alex tried to intervene. He met Ethan in a parking garage, pacing like a caged animal. "You need to leave," Alex said. "Disappear. I'll cover what I can." "You see not," Ethan replied. "And neither can I." Alex slammed his fist into a concrete pillar. "Then you going to die here." Hope arrived in an unexpected form. A woman named Karen Liu from Internal Affairs. She did not introduce herself as a savior. She introduced herself as a listener. She had noticed patterns. Fires with no suspects. Witnesses who changed their minds. A boy who kept showing up at the edges of things. I do not need heroics, she told Ethan in a parked car, rain tapping on the roof. I need structure, names, how the pieces connect. Ethan hesitated. Betrayal had consequences he understood too well. Karen leaned closer. You already betrayed yourself. This is just deciding who benefits. He agreed to talk. Carefully, partially, enough to build a shape without revealing every bone. The third fight came the night Victor realized Ethan was slipping. It happened in a storage facility near the river. No speeches. No teatrics. Victor's men moved to restrain Ethan, and Ethan reacted on instinct. He broke free, grabbed a metal bar, swung wildly. He was not skilled, just desperate. Someone went down. Someone else shouted. The chaos bought him seconds, not freedom. Victor watched from a distance, his face unreadable. When the noise settled, Victor approached Ethan slowly. I tried to make this easy, he said. You confuse mercy with weakness. Ethan wiped blood from his mouth. You confuse control with loyalty. Victor's eyes hardened. Then you've chosen. The final turn hit harder than the blows. Victor did not order Ethan killed. He ordered him isolated, cut off from his mother, from Alex, from any leverage he thought he had. Ethan was boxed in, alive but erased, a problem deferred. Alone in a safe house with blank walls and no windows, Ethan finally broke. Not loudly, quietly. He sat on the floor and understood that every path forward required him to become something he hated. There was no escape that did not cost someone else. And for the first time since the gas station, Ethan wished he had kept walking. Outside, the city kept moving, unaware that a choice was ripening. One that would not save a life this time, but end a world. If you want, I can continue straight into the final section with the escape, the reversal, and the emotional climax, keeping the same compact style and sharper dialogue. The safe house taught Ethan what Victor really valued. Not silence. Not obedience. Predictability. 3 days passed without voices. Food arrived twice a day through a slot in the door. No guards in sight. No cameras he could find. Victor did not need them. The isolation itself was the message. You exist because I allow it, and you exist alone. On the fourth night, the power went out. Not dramatically. No bang. Just the hum of electricity cutting mid-breath. Darkness settled. Thick and immediate. Ethan sat still, heart racing, waiting for footsteps that did not come. Instead, a phone slid under the door. It buzzed once. Unknown number. He hesitated, then answered. You always notice the wrong details, Victor said calmly. You look for exits instead of leverage. Ethan swallowed. What do you want? To see if you've learned anything. A pause. Karen Lou is not as careful as she thinks. Ethan's blood went cold. She likes patterns, Victor continued. Patterns make people predictable. Predictable people can be protected. Or removed. You'll kill her, Ethan said. I would not have to. Victor's voice softened. But you might. The line went dead. That was the last push. Not fear for himself, not even anger, but the clarity that came with knowing the system would keep feeding until nothing resisted it. Ethan did not pace. He did not panic. He sat on the floor and did something he had been avoiding since the beginning. He planned. Karen did not need more names. She needed timing. Proof that could not be buried or negotiated away. Victor survived because everything bad happened in fragments. Ethan's value had always been his position between those fragments. He used the phone once. One message. No details, no explanations. Just coordinates, a time, and 3 words. Bring everything public. The escape was not cinematic. No shootout, no clever disguise. The door was unlocked. It always had been. Victor wanted Ethan to walk out when he was ready, convinced it was his own idea. Ethan walked. The final confrontation happened where the debt began, at a waterfront construction site wrapped in scaffolding and fog. Victor stood alone, code immaculate, city lights breaking behind him. I wondered when you'd stop waiting, Victor said. I am not here to bargain, Ethan replied. Victor smiled faintly. Everyone is. Ethan shook his head. Not today. Sirens sounded in the distance. Not rushing. Just present. Like an inevitability. Victor glanced toward the noise, then back at Ethan, studying him with something close to respect. You know this would not end cleanly, Victor said. You do not win. You just choose which mess lives on. I know, Ethan said. I am choosing the one that does not own me. Victor stepped closer. You could still walk away. I'd let you disappear. New name. New city. You'd never be poor again. Ethan met his eyes. That's the problem. You think poverty was my fear. For the first time, Victor hesitated. That was when Karen arrived. Not alone. Not quietly. Lights, voices, cameras. Not a raid. A disclosure. Warrants stacked with evidence that had nowhere left to hide. Victor did not run. He adjusted his cuffs when they came for him, calm to the end. As he passed Ethan, he leaned in slightly. You learn, he said. They use you too, just with better manners. Maybe he was right. The fallout was long and uneven. Trials, headlines, settlements that never reached the neighborhoods they were meant to fix. Alex transferred cities. Ethan's mother slept better but aged faster. Karen kept her job barely. Ethan received no reward, no medal, no apology from the world he disrupted. He went back to work, fixed engines, helped when he could, walked home instead of riding when the night felt too heavy. Once, months later, a boy fell off a bike in the street. Cars swerved. People slowed. No one stopped. Ethan did. As he knelt there, checking for broken bones, he felt something loosen. Not relief, not pride, just alignment. The quiet knowledge that he had paid his debt without inheriting the system that demanded it. The city moved on. It always did. But somewhere in its machinery, a space remained where predictability had failed once. And that, Ethan knew, was enough. Years later, the city forgot Victor's name. It forgot the trials, the hearings, the careful language that had once promised reform. Buildings changed owners. Streets were renamed. The machine learned new rhythms. Ethan learned something else. He learned that systems do not die. They molt. One evening, after a late shift, he found an envelope taped to his apartment door. No stamp. No return address. Inside was a single photograph. A waterfront site, newly finished, glass and steel where scaffolding had once stood. On the back, a sentence written in careful block letters. Predictability restored. His phone rang before he could decide how to feel about it. Unknown number. He answered. A woman's voice this time. Calm. Educated. Younger than Victor had been. Mr. Hale. You do not know me. But I know you. Ethan leaned against the wall. If this is a threat, you relate. A soft laugh. Not a threat. An offer. People like you create disturbances. We study disturbances. They show us where to reinforce. I am done, Ethan said. No one ever is, she replied. You proved something important. Fear is not the only currency. Refusal has value. We like to understand it better. Silence stretched. You could hang up, she continued. You probably will. But understand this, the world you dented learned from you faster than you learned from it. Ethan closed his eyes. For a moment he was a kid again, kneeling on asphalt, hands shaking, choosing to stop. What happens if I say no? He asked. Nothing, she said. That's the beauty of it. Nothing visible. The line went dead. Ethan stood there for a long time. Then he went inside, locked the door, and slept without dreams. In the morning, the city looked the same. Traffic, sirens, ordinary urgency. But as he walked to work, he noticed how many people paused before crossing the street. How many watched reflections in windows instead of what was behind them. Fear had not vanished. It had evolved. Ethan kept walking anyway. Not because he believed he could change what was coming, but because stopping had never been his skill. And somewhere, quietly, the system adjusted for him again. never quite certain whether he was a variable or a warning. Months passed. Ethan's life resumed its muted rhythm. Long shifts, cheap coffee, evenings spent fixing his tiny apartment so it did not fall apart. But nothing was quite the same. Windows reflected more than light, they reflected intent. Shadows moved differently. People lingered a moment longer than necessary in doorways, not in fear, not in curiosity, but in a careful, measured awareness that made the city feel like a living circuit, with him at the wrong node. Then one evening, returning from a late shift, Ethan noticed a man leaning against a lamppost, smoking. He was ordinary-looking, too ordinary, but there was a weight in his stance that made Ethan pause. The man's gaze followed him, unblinking. Ethan's stomach twisted. Something about him felt rehearsed. "You re-hail," the man said without preamble. Ethan stopped. "Depends on who's asking." The man smiled, slow and thin. "Consider me a friend or an administrator. Both work. We've been observing your methods." "I do not have methods," Ethan said, though his fists clenched. "You do. The way you decide not to act or to act when you could ignore it. That's useful." He flicked ash from his cigarette. "Their essay project.
Minimal intervention.
But precise. You might be interested." Ethan shook his head. "I am done. I saved someone once. I almost died in the process, and I am not looking for applause or recruitment." The man tilted his head. "You not being recruited. You being integrated. That difference is subtle but important." Ethan did not answer. He felt the old thrill, the same that had surged when he had stepped between danger and a child long ago. But this was different. There was no immediate peril, no blood. Only the faint pulse of a machine he could neither see nor touch. The man straightened, dropping the cigarette. "Think about it. We'll call again. Maybe tonight, maybe tomorrow." He disappeared into the crowd like he had never been there. Ethan stood for a long while, breathing shallow, mind spinning. The city had learned him, tested him, and now it was inviting him in, or warning him. He did not know which, but he had a strange certainty that the next choice he made would no longer belong solely to him. And somewhere across town, a new shadow moved, patient, waiting, aware. It was not Victor. It was not his father. It was not even the woman who had called. It was the system itself, learning from the boy who refused, adapting, and preparing for its next student. Ethan walked home. The streets were quiet, but in that quiet, he could hear a pulse beneath the pavement, a rhythm he had unknowingly helped set. And he knew, with a sharp twist of both fear and resolve, that he had already stepped into something far larger than himself. The city did not just demand survival anymore. It demanded understanding. And Ethan Hale, whether he wanted it or not, was now a part of its curriculum. Ethan stood under the rain, the neon lights of the city blurring through the sheets of water. Cold ran down his face, but that did not matter. The choice was already made. There was no turning back. "You know why I am here." The voice was low but steady. "I know," Ethan replied without looking up. Every step, every word mattered now. The mob boss stepped forward from the shadows, his son behind him, hands stuffed into his pockets, watching safely. "No," he repeated. "You think you understand what you stepped into? You not just saving a life. You entering a system. You have a role whether you like it or not." Ethan took a step forward. "I do not want to be your pawn. I want to know why this happened." "Why me?" The boss smirked. "Because you not walk past. You interfere. And interference requires payment." Ethan let a small, bitter smile cross his face. "Then let the payment be fair. Not money, not favors. I want the truth." The boss faltered. Nobody had ever spoken to him this way, demanded equality. "Truth," he whispered. "Truth is no one walks away unchanged. You saved my son, and now you are part of this system. Your courage, your resolve, they will be used." Ethan nodded. He understood. The past could not be undone, only confronted. "I accept, but on my terms." The boss glanced at his son, then back at Ethan. From now on, you re either part of me or a threat. Do you understand? I understand, Ethan said. But I would not be a threat. And then, something unexpected happened. The boss's son stepped forward. Dad, he said. He deserves a chance to be more than you or I. The boss froze. Ethan barely believed his ears. What? He said. He saved me, the son said. He showed that courage is not measured in power or money. He deserves a choice. Ethan stepped back, stunned. So, we re-together? He asked. We re-together, the son replied. But the rules are mine now. And your interference will have consequences. He added, his voice firm, capable of toppling the old order. The boss looked at them both. For the first time, he realized he could no longer control the situation. His system, his power, it was cracking from within. Ethan felt a strange relief. Not because fear had vanished, but because now he could act by his own rules, not someone else's. Ready? The son asked. Ethan smiled. More than ever. And as they walked together through the rain, past neon lights and shadows of the old mob world, Ethan felt the shift. The world had not changed, but they had. The ending was not happy in any ordinary sense. It was strange, unsettling, full of new responsibility. But Ethan realized one thing. Sometimes saving a life saves more than one person. Sometimes it reshapes everything around you, if you willing to bear the consequences.